the man in black before Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings wasn't just a country music legend, he was a revolutionary. With his gravelly voice, defiant stare, and unapologetic authenticity, Jennings shattered the polished Nashville machine and helped forge a new genre, outlaw country. Alongside Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, and Jesse Coulter, he gave voice to a generation of listeners who felt alienated by the slick, formulaic sounds of mainstream country in the 1970s. Born Waylon Arnold Jennings on June 15, 1937, in Littlefield, Texas, he rose from poverty and personal struggle to become one of the most influential figures in American music. His songs, raw, honest, and steeped in hard living, spoke of heartbreak, addiction, freedom, and redemption. He didn't sing to entertain. He sang to survive. And in doing so, he changed country music forever. Roots in West Texas. A childhood forged in dust and music. Waylon Jennings was born in the cotton fields of West Texas, a region shaped by isolation, wind, and hard work. His parents, Laureen and William Albert Jennings, were poor farmers. Money was scarce, but music was always present. From an early age, Waylon was drawn to sound. He listened to the Grand Ole Opry on a battery-powered radio, captivated by the voices of Hank Williams, Lefty Frizzle, and Ernest Tubb. At age 8, he began playing the guitar, teaching himself by ear. His life changed at 12 when he was diagnosed with diabetes, a condition that would shape his health, his lifestyle, and eventually his career. He had to inject insulin daily, a challenge in an era when the disease was poorly understood and stigmatized. Despite his illness, Waylon was determined. He played in local bands, performed on radio stations, and dreamed of making it big. At 14, he landed a job at KLLL, a Lubbock radio station, where he hosted a show and played records. It was there he met a young Buddy Holly, who became a mentor and friend. When Holly formed the Crickets, he invited Waylon to join as bassist. In 1959, Waylon toured with Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper on the Winter Dance Party tour. But fate intervened. Jennings gave up his seat on the ill-fated plane that crashed on February 3, 1959, the day the music died. Holly had joked, "I hope your OL bus freezes up." Hours later, the plane went down. Jennings was devastated. He carried the guilt for decades. But the tragedy also solidified his resolve. He had to keep going. The Nashville years, struggle, submission, and rebellion. The 1960s, Jennings moved to Nashville, hoping to make his mark. He signed with RCA Records in 1965, a major label that had launched stars like Elvis Presley and Jim Reeves. But RCA wanted a polished commercial sound. They assigned him to work with producer Chet Atkins, the architect of the Nashville sound, a smooth, orchestrated style that minimized fiddles and steel guitars in favor of strings and background vocals. Jennings hated it. He didn't want to sing love songs over orchestral arrangements. He wanted to play real country music, raw, gritty, and honest. He wanted to sing about truck drivers, drunks, and broken hearts, not ballroom romance. But RCA refused to let him produce his own records. He was forced to use session musicians, stick to scripts, and conform to the label's vision. The result? A string of forgettable singles and growing frustration. He later said, "They wanted me to sound like someone I wasn't. I was a rebel with a guitar, not a Troy boy with a contract." By the late 1960s, he was drinking heavily, battling his diabetes, and losing faith in the music industry. The birth of outlaw country, a rebellion and turning point came in the early 1970s. Jennings began fighting for creative control. He demanded the right to choose his own musicians, produce his own albums, write or select his own songs, play his own way. After years of resistance, RCA finally relented. In 1973, he released Honky Tonk Heroes, a landmark album written almost entirely by Billy Joe Shaver. The songs were raw, poetic, and defiant tracks like Old Five and Dimers, Like Me, and You Asked Me to Reject It. Nashville polish in favor of truth-telling. The album was a revelation. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece. Fans embraced its honesty, and Jennings finally sounded like himself. This was the birth of outlaw country, a movement that rejected the slickness of mainstream Nashville and returned to the roots of honky-tonk, blues, and rock and roll. Jennings, along with Willie Nelson, Tommy Tubb, and Jesse Coulter, whom he married in 1969, became the face of the movement. Their 1976 compilation album, Wanted, The Outlaws, was the first country album to be certified platinum, proving that audiences craved authenticity over polish. The voice, grit, gravel, and grace. Waylon Jennings' voice was unlike any other. In country music, it wasn't pretty, it wasn't smooth. It was rough, deep, and full of smoke, like a man who'd lived hard and loved harder. He didn't sing with vibrato or flourish. He sang with intention. Every word felt earned. Every note carried weight. Listen to Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way? 1975, a scathing critique of how country music had strayed from its roots. We're singing more about rockets and feathers than for eunuchs and Bibles and such. He doesn't shout. He doesn't sneer. He states it like a fact everyone knows but no one says. Or I'm a ramblin' man. 1974, a song about a man who can't stay put. I was born a ramblin' man. The way he delivers that line low, steady, almost resigned makes it feel like a law of nature. And Good-Hearted Woman, 1972, a duet with Willie Nelson, is a masterpiece of emotional storytelling, a song about love, loyalty, and the wear and tear of time. Jennings' voice wasn't just a tool, it was a testament to survival, to honesty, to the cost of living. The songs that defined a life. Waylon Jennings didn't write all his songs, but he chose them like a man selecting scars. Only Daddy That'll Walk the Line, 1968, one of his first hits. This song tells the story of a father who loves his child despite his flaws. It's personal. Jennings struggled with being a present father during his touring years. Honky Tonk Heroes, 1973, the anthem of the Outlaw movement. A man who lives by his own code, unapologetic and unbroken. Luckenbach takes us back to The Basics of Love, 1977, Coriton with Bobby Emmons and Chips Moman. This song became a #1 hit and a cultural touchstone. It's a call to simplicity, to love, to leaving behind the noise of fame. Mamas, Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys, 1978, a duet with Willie Nelson. This song is often misunderstood as a warning, but it's really a man explaining why he can't stay, why the road calls him. Amanda, 1979, one of his most tender ballads, written by Don Williams. Jennings delivers it with rare vulnerability, a love song that feels like a prayer. The Marriage to Jessie Coulter, Love, Music, and Turmoil in 1969. Jennings married Jessie Coulter, born Miriam Johnson, a talented singer-songwriter and former member of the Phoenix Singers. She had already recorded music under her own name, but after their marriage, she adopted the stage name Jessie Coulter. Their relationship was passionate but volatile. Both struggled with addiction. Waylon battled alcohol and amphetamines. Jessie had her own demons. They fought, separated, and reconciled repeatedly. But when they sang together, magic happened. Their duets, Suspicious Minds, Under Your Spell Again, I'm Not Lisa, blended their contrasting styles. His gritty baritone, her soft, haunting soprano. They sounded like two halves of a broken heart trying to mend. Jess's 1975 album, I'm Jessie Coulter, produced by Waylon, included the hit I'm Not Lisa, which reached #1 on the country charts. Waylon's support helped launch her solo career. In 1979, after a near-fatal health crisis, Waylon developed a life-threatening abdominal infection. Both entered rehab. They got sober and rebuilt their lives together. They remained married until Waylon's death in 2002, a testament to love that endured through chaos. The health battles, diabetes, addiction, and survival. Waylon Jennings' health was a constant battle. His type 1 diabetes required daily insulin. But in the 1960s and 70s, monitoring was difficult, especially on the road. He often neglected his treatment, leading to complications. He also struggled with addiction, first to amphetamines to stay awake on long drives, then to alcohol. By the late 1970s, he was consuming up to a quart of vodka a day. In 1984, he underwent double bypass surgery. In 1992, he was diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy, which damaged his eyesight. In 1999, he had both legs amputated below the knee due to circulation problems from diabetes. Yet, he kept performing. Even in a wheelchair, he toured, recorded, and gave interviews. He once said, "I've got more miles on me than a long-haul truck, but I'm still here." His resilience became part of his legend, the legacy. Why Waylon Jennings still matters: because authenticity is rare, because truth is dangerous, because a man who sings about his flaws makes us feel less alone. Waylon Jennings mattered because he refused to pretend. He didn't hide his pain. He didn't apologize for his past. He sang about failure, addiction, and regret, not to glorify them, but to witness them. He proved that a country singer could be a poet, a rebel, and a survivor. His influence is everywhere. Chris Stapleton channels his rawness. Eric Church cites him as a hero. Sturgill, Simpson, and Tyler Childers carry the outlaw torch. Casey Musgraves has covered Mamas, Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. Even artists outside country, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, and Kid Rock, have praised him. In 2001, he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. In 2007, Rolling Stone ranked him number 71 on its list of the 100 greatest artists of all time. The final years, a life lived loud and long despite his health struggles. Jennings never stopped working. He released his final studio album, Closing In on the Fire. In 1998, in 2000, he published his autobiography, Waylon, an autobiography, Coriton with Lenny Kaye. It's a raw, honest account of his life, no filters, no excuses. On February 13, 2002, at the age of 64, Waylon Jennings died in Chandler, Arizona, from complications of diabetes and respiratory failure. The country music world mourned. Tributes poured in from Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, and Merle Haggard. Fans lit candles, played his music, and remembered the man who sang like a storm. He was buried at Ridgecrest Cemetery in Mesa, Arizona. The final word: the man who wouldn't be tamed. Waylon Jennings didn't just sing songs. He lived them. He was the ramblin' man, the honky-tonk hero, the outlaw, He didn't care about fame. He cared about freedom, and in giving voice to the broken, the restless, and the real, he became immortal. So play Luckenbach, Texas. Turn it up loud. Close your eyes and let Waylon Jennings remind you, you don't have to be perfect to be true. Asterisk, asterisk, the sound of rebellion. Deconstructing the outlaw aesthetic. Waylon Jennings didn't just perform outlaw country, he defined it. The term outlaw wasn't just a marketing label. It was a philosophy, a way of life, and a sonic revolution. The outlaw sound was a rejection of the polished, string-laden Nashville productions of the 1960s. Instead, it embraced raw, stripped-down arrangements, minimal strings, prominent electric guitar, driving rhythm. Live in this studio energy. Musicians playing together in real time, capturing spontaneity, gritty vocals, no auto-tune, no smoothing, just truth, flaws and all. Songwriting with edge, themes of freedom, heartbreak, addiction, and defiance. Jennings' 1975 album Dreaming My Dreams is a masterclass in this style. Tracks like Art, You Sure Hank Done It This Way, and Bob Wills Is Still the King weren't just songs, they were manifestos. The latter, a tribute to Western swing legend Bob Wills, was a middle finger to Nashville's pop crossover. Bob Wills is still the king, and I don't mean that in a swinging kind of way. It was a declaration. Real country music isn't dead, and I'm still playing it. This aesthetic influenced generations of artists who valued authenticity over polish. The voice as a weapon. Phrasing, timing, and emotional intelligence. Waylon Jennings' voice was not technically perfect. It was perfectly human. He didn't sing with vibrato for effect. He didn't stretch notes for drama. He sang with intention, using silence, timing, and tone to convey meaning. Listen to I've Always Been Crazy, 1978. The opening line, I've always been crazy, but it keeps getting worse, is delivered with a wry, almost conversational tone. It's not a boast. It's a confession. Or don't you think this outlaw bit's done got out of hand? 1978. A self-aware satire of the outlaw image. He sings it with irony, acknowledging the myth, while questioning its cost. His phrasing was deliberate. He would pause mid-line to let emotion sink in, drop his voice to a near whisper for intimacy, let his voice crack not from weakness, but from truth. In Amanda, he doesn't belt the chorus, he leans into it, like a man whispering a secret to someone he loves. This wasn't singing, it was storytelling. The collaborator Willie, Johnny, and the Brotherhood of Outlaws. Waylon Jennings was not a lone rebel. He was part of a brotherhood, a group of artists who supported each other through personal and professional battles. His bond with Willie Nelson was legendary. They met in the 1960s, bonded over their shared frustrations with Nashville, and became lifelong friends. Their duets, Good-Hearted Woman, Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys, are cornerstones of country music. But it was his relationship with Johnny Cash that ran deepest. They met in the 1960s, and Cash became a mentor. When Jennings struggled with addiction, Cash offered support, having faced his own demons. They toured together, recorded together, and spoke openly about faith, failure, and redemption. In 1994, Jennings, Nelson, Cash, and Chris Christopherson formed the Highwaymen, a supergroup that embodied the outlaw spirit. Their albums and tours were triumphant, not because they were flawless, but because they were real foraging men who had lived hard and still had stories to tell. Jennings later said, "We weren't trying to be legends. We were just trying to stay alive." The father, shifting gears in later life, despite his ramblin' man image. Waylon Jennings deeply loved his family. He had two sons, Tommy Jennings, a musician and producer who worked on many of Waylon's later recordings. Shooter Jennings, born in 1979, Shooter would become a successful artist in his own right, blending country, rock, and metal. Waylon was often absent due to touring, and he later admitted regret over missed moments, but he tried to make up for it. In his later years, especially after getting sober, he became more present. He attended school events, helped with homework, and encouraged Shooter's music career. Shooter has said, "My dad wasn't perfect, but when he was there, he was really there." After Waylon's death, Shooter carried on his legacy, forming the band Hierophant and later launching a solo career. He also produced a documentary, Outlaw, celebrating the music of Waylon Jennings, which featured performances of his father's songs by artists like Eric Church, Zac Brown, and Jamie Johnson. The influence on modern country, from outlaw to Americana. Waylon Jennings' influence extends far beyond the 1970s. He paved the way for the 1990s country rebels, Dwight Yoakam, Travis Tritt, and Marty Stewart, who brought back traditional sounds. The 2000s alt-country movement, Ryan Adams, Lucinda Williams, and the Drive-By Truckers, who blended country with rock and punk. The 2010s Americana wave, Chris Stapleton, Sturgill Simpson, Tyler Childers, and Zach Bryan, who reject pop country for raw, emotional storytelling. Even pop artists like Post Malone have cited Jennings as an influence, covering outlaw shit and wearing Waylon-inspired leather and bandanas. Jennings proved that country music doesn't have to be pretty to be powerful. The final performances. A warrior to the end of in and failing health, Jennings refused to retire. In 1997, After losing both legs, he returned to the stage in a wheelchair, performing at the Country Music Association Awards. The crowd gave him a standing ovation. He didn't play long, but he played proud. In 1998, he released Closing In on the Fire, an album that reflected on mortality, love, and survival. The title track, I'm closing in on the fire but I'm still warm inside, was a quiet farewell. His final public performance was in 1999, at a tribute concert in Nashville. He sang I'm a Ramblin' Man, his voice weaker but still defiant. He didn't go quietly. He went singing. The legacy. Why Waylon Jennings will never fade: because rebellion is timeless, because truth is dangerous, because a man who sings from the scars teaches us how to heal. Waylon Jennings mattered because he refused to be tamed. He didn't conform, he didn't apologize, he didn't stop. He sang about the cost of freedom, the weight of addiction, the beauty of love, the dignity of survival, and in doing so, he gave voice to millions who felt invisible. The last word, the man who sang the truth. Waylon Jennings died on February 13th, but his voice, that will never die. It lives in the growl of a Chris Stapleton ballad, the honesty of a Sturgill Simpson lyric, the defiance of a young artist choosing truth over trend, the quiet man who plays Lutkenbach, Texas. After a long day, he wasn't a saint. He was a sinner, and that's why we love him. So here's to Waylon Jennings, the outlaw who changed the game, the rebel who stayed real, the man who sang like a storm and lived like a legend. And as long as there is a guitar, a road, or a heart that won't be broken, Waylon Jennings will still be singing. The studio is battlefield. Jennings fight for creative control. Waylon Jennings didn't just want to make music, he wanted creative sovereignty. In the 1960s and 70s, record labels like RCA held absolute power over artists. They chose producers, session musicians, songs, and even album art. Waylon refused to accept that. His battle for artistic freedom was long and hard. He began by quietly resisting Chet Atkins' polished Nashville sound, insisting on using his own band, the Wailers, instead of the anonymous session players. He demanded to record live, with minimal overdubs, preserving the raw energy of performance. By the mid-1970s, after years of tension, RCA finally gave in. In 1973, Jennings became one of the first country artists to produce his own albums. This was revolutionary. It meant he could choose his own songs, shape the arrangements, control the tempo and tone, reject unwanted interference. The result was Honky Tonk Heroes, a landmark album that became the blueprint for outlaw country. Produced by Jennings and Richie Albright, his drummer and childhood friend, it featured Billy Joe Shaver's poetic, unvarnished lyrics and a sound that was lean, gritty, and real. Jennings later said, "They thought I was just a cowboy with a guitar, but I was a general with a plan." His victory opened the door for other artists: Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, Loretta Lynn to demand the same rights. He didn't just change his career, he changed the entire industry. The lyrics, poetry of the working man. Waylon Jennings didn't write all his songs, but he had an uncanny ability to choose material that reflected his soul. He gravitated towards songs that spoke of freedom, the need to roam, to escape, to live on one's own terms, regret the weight of bad choices, lost love, and wasted time, resilience, the quiet strength of surviving another day. Billy Joe Shaver, his most frequent collaborator, wrote lyrics that felt like spoken truth. In Old Five and Dimers Like Me, Shaver sings, "We're not the fittest, but we're the first in line, and we're still hanging on by the skin of our teeth." Jennings didn't just sing it, he lived it. Other key songwriters who shaped his sound: Chris Christopherson's Sunday Mornin' Coomin' Down, a song about loneliness and hangovers, became a Jennings signature. Steve Young wrote Lonesome, Ornery, and Mean, the title track of Jennings' 1973 album, a defiant anthem of independence. Tommy Collins co-wrote The Taker, a haunting tale of a man who steals love and leaves ruin. These weren't pop songs. They were short stories in 3 minutes, raw, poetic, and deeply human. The image, leather, long hair, and the look of rebellion before Waylon. Country stars wore rhinestone suits, cowboy hats, and boots polished to a shine. Jennings changed that. He appeared on stage in black leather jackets, jeans, long hair. No, Hatha looked more like a rock star than a country singer. And that was the point. His image was a visual rebellion, a rejection of Nashville's conservative image. He didn't care about looking country, he cared about looking real. When asked why he dressed that way, he said, "I'm not here to impress the board of directors. I'm here to sing to the people who drive trucks, work fields, and get their hands dirty." His look influenced generations. Johnny Cash adopted the black wardrobe. Steve Earle and Dwight Yoakam embraced the rugged aesthetic. Post Malone and Machine Gun Kelly have cited his style as an influence. Jennings proved that authenticity is the most powerful fashion statement. The influence on rock and beyond, though rooted in country. Waylon Jennings' music crossed genres. Bruce Springsteen has called him a poet of the American underdog. Bob Dylan admired his phrasing and emotional honesty. Kid Rock covered Good-Hearted Woman and cited Jennings as a major influence. Pearl Jam's Eddie Vedder has performed Outlaw Shit in concert. The White Stripes referenced him in lyrics and interviews. His blend of country, blues, and rock anticipated the Americana genre. He didn't see music in boxes. He saw it as one big, messy, beautiful truth. Even punk rockers respected him. His defiance, his independence, his refusal to conform, these were punk values long before punk existed. The voice of the forgotten. Jennings is a social commentator. Waylon Jennings didn't write protest songs, but his music was deeply political. In its humanity, he sang for the truck driver who never sees his kids, the alcoholic trying to stay sober, the divorced man who still loves his ex. The working class man ignored by the system. In Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way? He critiques not just music, but cultural drift. We're singing more about rockets and feathers than for units and Bibles and such. It's a lament for lost values, for music that once spoke to real life. In Don't You Think This Outlaw Bit's Done Got Out of Hand? He mocks the commodification of rebellion, how the music industry turned a genuine movement into a marketing gimmick. He didn't preach, he observed, and in doing so he gave voice to those who felt invisible. The final reflection, why Jennings endures: because rebellion is not a phase, it's a principle. And authenticity is not a trend, it's a choice. Waylon Jennings endured because he never sold out. He never softened his voice. He never changed his look. He never stopped fighting. He was the anti-celebrity, famous, not for fame, but for truth. And in a world of curated images and manufactured stars, that's revolutionary. The last recordings, Facing Mortality with Dignity. In his final years, Jennings kept creating. Closing In on the Fire 1998, an album of quiet reflection, with songs about love, loss, and survival. Never Say Die, Live 2000, a concert recording that captured his final performances. His voice was weaker, but his spirit was unbroken. Unreleased demos, bootlegs, and private recordings show him working on new material. Even as his health declined, he didn't make music to be remembered. He made it because he had to. And that's the mark of a true artist. The legacy, the man who changed music. Waylon Jennings didn't just influence country music, he liberated it. Before him, artists were employees. After him, they were creators. He proved that artists could produce their own records, songs could be raw, and still be hits. Honesty could sell more than polish, and in doing so, he gave future generations the courage to be themselves. The final word, the outlaw who never left. Waylon Jennings died on February 13, 2002. But he didn't disappear. He lives in the growl of a Chris Stapleton ballad, the honesty of a Tyler Childers lyric, the defiance of a young artist who says, I won't change for radio, the man who plays I'm a ramblin' man on a dusty road at midnight. He wasn't perfect, he was real. And that's why we still listen. So here's to Waylon Jennings, the man who sang the truth, the rebel who stayed free, the outlaw who never, ever gave in. And as long as there's a guitar, a highway, or a heart that refuses to be tamed, Waylon Jennings will still be singing. The voice that broke the mold, a vocal revolution in country music. Waylon Jennings didn't just sing differently. He redefined what a country voice could be. Before him, the ideal country singer had a clear, twangy, tone-polished, precise, and often high-pitched. Think Eddie Arnold, Jim Reeves, or even early George Jones. Waylon shattered that mold. His voice was deep, rough, and full of grit like gravel on a back road, weathered by wind and time. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't smooth, but it was real. Every crack, every rasp, every growl carried the weight of lived experience. He didn't sing at the audience. He sang with them. Listen to Amanda, 1979. The song is a tender ballad, yet Jennings doesn't soften his voice. He sings it like a man who's been through hell but still believes in love. The rawness doesn't ruin the romance, it deepens it. You believe him because he sounds like someone who's suffered, not someone reading a script. Or I've Always Been Crazy, 1978, where he delivers the title line with a wry, almost conversational tone. There's no bravado, no exaggeration, just a man stating a fact about himself like he's been saying it his whole life. This vocal authenticity became a hallmark of the outlaw movement. It wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. And in a genre built on storytelling, truth was the only currency that mattered. Jennings' voice influenced a generation of singers who valued character over clarity. Johnny Cash deepened his own vocal tone in later years, embracing a similar, gravelly delivery. Merle Haggard admired Jennings' refusal to conform. Chris Stapleton channels that same raw, soulful growl, proof that the outlaw voice lives on. Jennings proved that a voice doesn't have to be beautiful to be powerful, it just has to be honest. The band, the Wailers, and the Power of Loyalty. One of Waylon Jennings' most underrated contributions was his loyalty to his band. The way LORS. In an era when Nashville used anonymous session musicians, the famed Nashville team, Jennings insisted on touring and recording with his own group. This was radical. It meant less studio control for producers, more creative input from the band, a unified sound that evolved over time. The Wailers weren't just sidemen, they were musical partners. Key members included Richie Albright, drummer and childhood friend from Littlefield, Texas. Albright became Jennings' co-producer and closest collaborator. Ralph Mooney, pedal steel guitarist, known for his minimalist, bluesy style, his playing on Good-Hearted Woman and Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way defined the Outlaw sound. Tony Joe White, songwriter and guitarist who contributed to Jennings' later albums. Jerry Grapp, bassist, who anchored the band's rhythm section. Jennings paid them fairly, treated them with respect, and gave them credit. He once said, "A band isn't a backing group, it's a family, and family sticks together." This loyalty fostered a tight, intuitive sound, a band that could anticipate each other's moves, breathe together, and play with the cohesion of a single organism. It also set a precedent. Artists like Willie Nelson, Steve Earle, and Dwight Yoakam followed suit, keeping long-term bands and giving them creative recognition. The influence on songwriting, elevating the craft. Waylon Jennings didn't write most of his biggest hits, but he had an uncanny ear for great songs. He didn't chase trends, he chased truth. His collaborations with Billy Joe Shaver were particularly transformative. Shaver's lyrics were poetic, unflinching, and deeply Southern, full of references to Texas, dust, whiskey, and redemption. Songs like Honky Tonk Heroes, You Asked Me To, and Old Five and Dimers Like Me weren't just songs. They were short stories, vignettes of broken men, lost love, and quiet dignity. Jennings didn't just record Shaver's songs, he elevated them. His delivery, slow, deliberate, full of space, gave the lyrics room to breathe. He didn't overthink, he let the words do the work. This approach inspired a new generation of songwriter artists. Guy Clark, Townes Van Zandt, and Rodney Crowell wrote with similar poetic depth. Casey Musgraves and Jason Isbell cite Jennings' song choices as a model for authenticity. Tyler Childers and Zach Bryan write in the same tradition. Rural, real. Jennings proved that great songs don't need polish, they just need to be sung with belief. The cultural symbol Waylon, as the anti-hero Waylon Jennings, didn't fit the mold of the traditional country star. He wasn't a cowboy in rhinestones. He wasn't a crooner in a tuxedo. He was a working-class rebel, a man with long hair, a leather jacket, and a voice like a chainsaw, and that made him a cultural icon. He became a symbol of independence, the man who wouldn't be told what to do. Authenticity, the artist who refused to fake it. Resilience, the survivor who kept going despite illness, addiction, and loss. His image appeared on t-shirts, posters, and tattoos, motorcycles, and pickup trucks. Murals in Nashville, Austin, and Tucson. Fans didn't just admire him, they identified with him. He was the guy who worked hard, loved hard, and messed up but never quit. Even outside country music, his image has been adopted by rock, punk, and metal fans. Proof that rebellion knows no genre. The health struggles, a life on the edge. Waylon Jennings' health was a constant battle, one he fought with defiance. Diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 12, he had to inject insulin daily, a challenge in an era before glucose monitors and insulin pumps. On the road, he often skipped doses, leading to dangerous highs and lows. His addiction to amphetamines began in the 1960s, when he used pep pills to stay awake during long drives between gigs. By the 1970s, he was dependent on them, along with alcohol. In 1984, he underwent quadruple bypass surgery after a near-fatal heart episode. In 1992, he was diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy, which damaged his vision. In 1999, due to poor circulation from diabetes, he had both legs amputated below the knee, yet he kept performing. He toured in a wheelchair, he recorded new music, he gave interviews with humor and humility. He once said, "I've got more hardware than a junkyard dog, but I'm still here, and I'm still singing." His resilience became part of his legend, not as a tragedy, but as a triumph of will. The final years a quiet goodbye despite his health, Jennings remained active. In 1996, he released Right for the Time, an album of blues and country covers. Closing In on the Fire was released, its title, a metaphor for aging and mortality. In 2000, he published his autobiography, Waylon, an autobiography co-written with Lenny Kaye. It's raw, honest, and free of self-glorification. His final public appearance was in 1999, at a tribute concert in Nashville. He sang, "I'm a Ramblin' Man," his voice weaker but still defiant. He didn't make a big farewell. He didn't need to. His music was his goodbye. The legacy, why Waylon Jennings still matters, because authenticity is rare, because rebellion is necessary, because a man who sings from the scars teaches us how to heal. Jennings mattered because he refused to be tamed. He didn't conform. He didn't apologize. He didn't stop. He sang about the cost of freedom, the weight of addiction, the beauty of love, the dignity of survival, and, in doing so, he gave voice to millions who felt invisible. The last word. The man who never left. Waylon Jennings died on February 13, 2002, in Chandler, Arizona, from complications of diabetes and respiratory failure. But he didn't disappear. He lives in the growl of a Chris Stapleton ballad, the honesty of a Sturgill Simpson lyric, the defiance of a young artist choosing truth over trend, the quiet man who plays Luckenbach, Texas. After a long day, he wasn't a saint. He was a sinner, and that's why we love him. So here's to Waylon Jennings, the outlaw who changed the game, the rebel who stayed real, the man who sang like a storm and lived like a legend. And as long as there is a guitar, a road, or a heart that won't be broken, Waylon Jennings will still be singing.